Hello, everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am excited to bring a guest on today and talk all about men's mental health. Hello, Colton. I just wanted to introduce you very quickly, and then we'll jump into the topic. Today's guest is Colton Miller. He is the owner of Blue Skies Brain Health. He's a licensed mental health counselor, nationally certified counselor, and he's a qualified supervisor in the state of Florida. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Monica. And I look forward to talking about some men's mental health because I know it's a important topic, but
Mhm.
difficult one sometimes too for men to get into services and feel comfortable approaching therapy too.
Absolutely. So June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I thought it would be great following Mental Health Awareness Month in May to interview you and talk a little bit about the importance of specifically men's mental health. What are some barriers and what are some things that can be helpful in therapy for men?
Yeah. I think the biggest barrier, hands down, is men feeling as though it makes them weak or makes them feel as though oh, I can't manage everything in my
Mhm,
life on my own and I need to
mhm.
get some help, right? I need to go to
Right.
someone else outside of myself to get
Mhm.
some help. That is the thing that hands down does not sit right with a lot of men. Uh,
Mhm.
but what I would tell men in that situation is, it's funny because we go to other people to help for so many other things, right? Like if
Mhm.
we have a broken arm, we go to the doctor, right?
Right.
If we, um, want to get physically fit, maybe we hire a personal trainer. Men have no problem doing that. We have no problem
Mhm.
hiring a nutritionist or anything like that. But for some reason, when it comes to our brain, we have that hesitation. So, um, I would tell men whatever way you need to think about it, whether it's,
Mhm.
like I said earlier, mental resilience
Mhm.
coaching, right? View it as that, right? I think the word like therapy sometimes doesn't sit right with people. It makes us feel as though there's something wrong, and that's just
Mhm.
not the case. We can work on how well we're performing
Mhm.
mentally,
Mhm.
without having to feel like something's wrong with
Right.
us.
Mhm. I often find that it is, exactly what you're talking about. Men want, they kind of know intuitively, hey, I need some extra help here, but not really sure how to talk about it. Or often since I work a lot with relationships, I get the couple in or if it's a heterosexual relationship, a wife calling and saying, hey, I'm noticing my husband or partner is a little bit more irritable or withdrawn, or, even loss of sexual interest or not sleeping well. What do I do? How can I get them into therapy?
Yeah.
you know, um, I also think that a lot of it is there is this notion of like toxic masculinity
Mhm.
and stigma around that. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that. And also men having a hard time just saying, well, I don't want to go to therapy and talk about feelings. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't work for me. And I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, I hear that all the time as well. And I run into the same thing. It's typically the wife calling in to get the husband into couples counseling or even individual therapy.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
um, yeah, I would say, what I always tell men who come into therapy with me, kind of use some of that positive reinforcement to let them know they're on the right track and that facing some of the things that we deal with that us as men we typically kind of shove down and it's always when it bubbles up and we are in crisis mode where men typically reach out for help. But what I'll say is like talking about those things before it becomes a big problem
mhm,
is actually the manly thing to do. It's
right.
easy to like shut down and not talk about anything or
Mhm,
numb things out with alcohol or substances or whatever it may be. Like it's the more manly thing to own up to things. And that's the way I always try to frame it for men coming into therapy too, is like, hey, great job owning up to like what you're going through right now and
mhm,
to work on it. Like a lot of people wouldn't face these things.
Right, right. I think it's also good to kind of frame, you were using the analogy earlier, and I use a lot of sports metaphors because we're a sports family. But, if you're on a team, you do have a coach. And if the play isn't working right, your coach is going to let you know, but he's not going to fix it for you. There has to be some communication there of here's like, let's look over this, let's see what's happening to make improvements.
Mhm.
And I kind of look at that like therapy too. Is like, let's look at what's going on, where you want
Right.
to make some adjustments, and then how to step forward into that. And, that's not the case all the time, but I do think that that's kind of helpful. And that's that resiliency, men's resiliency coaching. I love that little
Yeah.
phrase.
Yeah. It's so interesting because when you can frame it that way, I find a lot of men like really like therapy when they actually come and give themselves to it and put a lot into it. It
Mm-hmm.
really I get a sense from my clients, my male clients, that it's like, man, I've been waiting a long time to just talk to someone else about this stuff. It's like it's almost like an immediate weight off their shoulders because I will say as a man, we don't get those opportunities to like talk about, what's going on emotionally with us very
Mm-hmm.
often.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the brain health. Our physical health is important, just like our mental health is important. And honestly, the two are connected, right? If I'm not taking care of myself physically, I'm going to notice my mental health not doing great. And if I'm not taking care of my mental health, I'm going to notice some physical health as well. And so in men, I was doing some research. There is a higher rate of suicide in men, and we've seen
Mhm.
that. There's a lot of underreports of feelings of depression, anxiety. So we're seeing, not to just make it a numbers game because it's not just about numbers, but we are seeing a difference if men aren't seeking help. I also know GI issues are very common, and this is really for men and women.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but in your opinion, it's just, what are you kind of noticing? And you do a lot of brain health therapy and education. So just want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. That's always a big part of our therapeutic process is, we deal with the underlying psychological issues that may be there, but or the thinking errors that may be there, but
Mhm.
we also cover brain health at some point because in my mind, it's like the other half of our mental
Yeah.
well-being is the
Right.
brain health portion of it, which and for those who haven't heard the term brain health before, what I'm referring to is more the biological functioning of the brain as an organ. And
Mhm.
so we look into diet, exercise, brain healthy supplements,
Mhm.
avoiding things that are bad for your brain, alcohol, other substances.
Mhm.
uh, so we really try to get the brain functioning as well as it can because I think that helps people make other changes in their life as well. So the two,
Mhm.
the psychological end of things and the biological end of things, they
Mhm.
very much overlap and
Mhm.
they can really create this full picture of well-being. Um, you mentioned GI issues and things like
Mhm.
that. It's really amazing how many people are going through, GI issues and, maybe not realizing how anxious they're feeling on a day-to-day
Mhm.
basis, not
Mhm.
even quite picking up on what that feels like. And I see it quite a bit. We resolve some of the underlying anxiety and GI
Mhm.
issues clear up. And
Mhm.
vice versa, right? If there's GI issues and we use, say, probiotics or
Mhm.
other more natural gut health
Mhm.
remedies too, as far as someone's diet goes, uh,
Mhm.
then their anxiety improves too, because most of the serotonin that actually hits our brain is produced in our gut. So it's
Mhm.
so important and a piece that you can't miss when you're looking at your mental health.
Mhm. Yes, I talk a lot about Dr. Uma Nadu. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's a nutritional psychiatrist. And she wrote a book. This she's written two. This is Your Brain on Food and Calm Your Mind with Food. It's a great resource for people, but she really goes into certain mental health diagnoses and what sort of foods increase those symptoms and what sort of foods decrease those symptoms.
Yeah.
So I think it's a fabulous book. The more and more we know about the research on our bodies, we can't ignore the interconnectedness, of our bodies and our mental health, our physical health, what we put in our bodies, how we talk to ourselves, the people that we put in our lives that help support us or tear us down. You
Yeah.
know, I think, how we move our bodies, these
Mhm.
are all important pieces of our mental health. And this is really for men and women. I know we're talking just about men,
Yeah.
but I think it's,
Yeah.
it's a really important piece systemically. How do we care for ourselves?
Absolutely. And I think it resonates so well with people. I think we all feel that. We
Mhm.
all can kind of understand and feel how
Yeah.
different things in our life and different things in our body impact other things, right?
Hmm.
And I think it's just gonna that perspective is just gonna continue growing because it's the truth, right? It all is so connected that we have to be mindful of all those different areas to really be have a high level
Hmm.
of wellness.
Hmm.
Um, but I would say, speaking of men in particular,
Hmm.
something that I see in the brain health space with men is trying to give men some alternatives
Hmm.
for, like I said, numbing out feelings and things
Hmm.
like that. Whether it be, in therapy, of course, you have someone to talk to about what's going on in your life, but I always encourage, even instead of an alcoholic drink,
Hmm.
having, sparkling seltzer and some L-theanine and ashwagandha, right? It'll
Hmm.
promote some relaxing effects if you're feeling a
Hmm.
bit on edge after a
Hmm.
stressful day of work or something like that. But it's brain healthy, right? So
Hmm.
trying to just like educate and teach people some brain healthy alternatives for really common numbing agents in men,
Hmm.
alcohol, nicotine,
Hmm.
marijuana. Those are the big ones. So trying to
Right.
teach more brain healthy alternatives for those things as well.
Hmm. Do you talk to men about the importance of community?
We do quite a bit, and I,
Mhm.
you know, I know you are as well, but I'm a big believer that that is just one of the foundational things in
Hmm.
terms of our happiness.
Hmm. I talk a lot about that as well, whether I'm meeting just with an individual man or in the context of a couple, because I do think it's so important. Like we thrive in connection with others, right? And I do find it's a little bit harder for men to reach out. And that's why I'm loving this running groups, CrossFit, extracurricular kinds of things where men are getting together,
Yeah.
and I think that that's great, for men, but it would be nice if there were some others because a lot of those things are also let's meet at the brewery. Like, well,
Right. Right.
wait a minute.
Yeah, it's interesting because we work with mainly younger adults,
Mhm.
really like age 16 or so to 35 or 40 is kind of our niche range at Blue Skies Brain Health. But um, it's interesting the transition for people from college into the workforce because, in college, you're put in front of so many other like-minded people, right? You're in maybe clubs or organizations or fraternities and sororities or sports teams in college. And you generally yet you have some immediate friends just by proximity in
Mhm.
college, right?
Right.
And when you get out of college and into the workforce, especially in a place like Florida where it can be kind of transient, right? People are moving in and out, and maybe
Mhm.
even a little bit harder here to build a sense of community in some ways. Um, I will say, for men there, it is so crucial to find things outside of just drinking culture to
Mhm.
make connections, right? Maybe coming from
Mhm.
college, that's what you knew. That's all you're used to is going to a bar or hanging out with friends. But like you
Hmm.
said, running clubs. I love Meetup, the app
Hmm.
Meetup,
Yes.
and you can
Hmm.
find different groups. But even trying to find like-minded people and creating it yourself, more
Hmm.
people would be on board with your ideas than you think, even if
Right.
it's a men's book club or something like that. Those things are so hard to find, but I think a lot of us would really enjoy things like that too.
Right. And for people who don't know, I'm sure everyone knows by now, but I just want to say meetup.com is not, or the app is not a dating site. It's actually a site for people who with similar interests. They kind of get together and they post like when they're meeting, where, and there's a lot of information. There's a lot of different groups, even in the Tampa Bay area, of people coming together. So I think it's a great resource.
Yeah. Yeah, on this topic too, it makes me think of in this area in particular, but really all around the country at this point, people are moving around more than ever, right? Like when we look at previous generations, it was a more nuclear family where
Hmm.
everyone's in the same hometown and stuff like
Yes.
that. Again, you have that built-in sense of community. So I think this is partially just the way the world is moving, but again, there are ways to connect and form
Mhm.
that sense of community. I will say part of it is what you give too. I find a lot of my clients have a hard time even responding to text messages from
Mhm.
friends and things like that. Uh,
Mhm.
there's those, and you have to ask yourself why, right? Like what pressure am I feeling right now that's making me not want to respond
Mhm.
and connect with someone? Um,
Right. Mhm.
so I think addressing some of those anxieties, maybe some of the pressures, the biggest one with men in particular is that feeling of not being good enough, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
It's
largely from,
interesting. I think I think a lot of it has to do with since COVID, and you tell me what you think. We got used to doing most things virtually, and so we just got familiar with it, and it's really impacted person to person communication, like relationship building, communication,
yeah.
because you risk a little more vulnerability to put yourself out there.
Mhm.
And so I encourage both men and women, to form relationships outside of the virtual realm, or to go and meet up with their friends, or just go, out into the community and walk around just as a way to start, because
Right.
person to person contact is still really important.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're spot on. When you think about it with COVID, we had a long period of time there where all of us, we weren't working on those neural connections in our brain that allow us to socialize effectively and with a low level of anxiety, right? Our anxiety probably increased in social
Hmm.
situations.
Hmm.
And this is where it connects to the physiological functioning of the brain, right?
Hmm.
With our neural connections in our brain, the biggest concept is use it or lose it, right? So
Right.
and we didn't use it. We didn't flex that muscle for a long time during COVID. So uh, a lot of this is reteaching how to socialize and how to form community.
Absolutely. So, what are some good resources that you think are out there for men?
Well, for men who like community sports, I know in this area, Tampa Bay Club Sport's a great one. I know a lot of people make friends through that organization.
Hmm.
Obviously, as far as therapy goes, I know my practice, Blue Skies Brain Health, and your practice, Monica,
Hmm.
are great resources for people for individual and couples counseling.
Hmm.
Um, but I always say that's kind of like up to uh, discovering what you think you need in your life too. There's lots of great resources out there
Hmm.
in every realm, right? We have to do a little bit of research and dedicate time to that research too, right? Like
Hmm.
that sometimes is a foreign concept, I think, to people is like actually like setting
Right.
aside time in your daily schedule to
Hmm.
research ways I can join a group and form a community of people around me, right? We schedule
Right.
so many things in for our workday, but we forget about, our personal life and things that
Right.
actually contribute to our happiness.
hmm I also want to say that, like NAMI, NAMI.org, that's a great, like, if you just want to start researching men's mental health, like, that's a great organization that talks a lot about mental health. Psychology Today also has a lot of great articles out there that talk and address men's mental health and how to ask and get help. Um, Several years ago, I interviewed a colleague, and he had a book called Man, Just Express Yourself, or Mental Health. I can't remember the name of the book, but it's a journal, and it's a fabulous journal just for men. His name
Mm,
is James Harris, and I'll put the link to his info on the bottom of the YouTube channel. But I think there is a lot of great information for men out there. Journaling, as you know, sometimes I get men and women rolling their eyes of like, oh, I'm not going to do that. But it's a great way just to kind of externalize instead of stuff.
mhm,
And, so I think, that's why I love walking, any kind of movement, and sometimes it's just, quick little bullet points to help. But, I think those are some good resources as well.
mhm. Absolutely. And, on that topic of journaling, I love journaling personally, but I get the same reaction
Yeah.
sometimes. Some people, they're not into it, but it can be anything, like you said, to externalize that, even if it's voice memos in your phone, or I find a lot of men like writing a song or something like that, or
Oh,
um,
music is a fabulous resource.
ah, yeah.
hmm That's great. All right. So before we end today, what would you just say are like a couple of takeaways that you want to make sure, the men that are listening or that women that are curious about how to get their, talk to their partner about mental health, what would you say?
Yeah. So I'll start with the women who maybe want to get the men in their lives, work on their mental health. I would say, like, do it with them, right? Like, take that journey with them, whether it's, both of you getting your individual therapy or whether it's couples counseling. Take that journey with them and frame it in a way that's like, hey, like, let's be the best version of ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Let's, like, I want us to uh, be the best version of ourselves, like mentally. Like, maybe we can set a goal to go to the gym, 5 times this week, right?
Mhm.
And trying to frame it in a way that is kind of like this, resilience coaching, right? Where it's like we're being the best version of ourselves, not you need therapy, right?
Right. I'm only here because you need it. Like, please don't say that.
Right, right. And I would say, for the men who maybe are curious about starting therapy or have looked into it before, um, I would say, I'm reading a book right now. It's actually called Hidden Potential, and that one's by Adam Grant, who is a social scientist and has lots of interesting studies. But it talks about, like, whenever we want to learn something new in life, it's not like our learning style or anything like that that gets us there. It's actually
Mhm.
our ability to get out of our comfort zone. It's our
Mhm.
ability to try something new. So,
Mhm.
like, men, if you feel like it's weak to ask for help or anything like that, it's actually not. It's actually hard. It's actually manly to do that. That's the
Mhm.
challenge in learning anything new, is getting out of our comfort zone. So
Mhm.
I would challenge men to,
Mhm.
yeah, take on this challenge, right?
Right.
Stop getting stuck in your comfort zone. Try
Mhm.
something new. If you don't like it and you don't want to continue, no one says you have to, right? But
Mhm.
it also could unlock things for you in life that allow
Mhm.
you to just maximize your potential and
Mhm.
really achieve full happiness too.
That's great.
Mhm.
I remember the name of that book. It's Men to Heal, and it looks like mental health. So by
Okay.
James Harris. So like I said, I'll post a link to it,
Yeah,
and we
I'll
can
have to
do
check that out.
the book you just mentioned as well. I think that's a great way to kind of frame it. Therapy. When we go to therapy, it requires, well, it doesn't require, but it helps you create change. Change is constant. And so it's, a good way to kind of look at rising up to the challenge and getting some help. I love that. So,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
then always, like we've been saying, it's always great to ask for help
Mhm.
in any capacity. So I think that that's a good thing. So thank you for being here today. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. To get a hold of me, you can call our practice phone number 727-490-8610. Or you can get a hold of us at blueskiesbrainhealth.com.
Hmm.
We have a contact form that you can submit to us, or
Hmm.
schedule directly with any of our therapists
Hmm.
right through our page there. So that's blueskiesbrainhealth.com. If anyone would like to get in contact, we'd love to help anyone, and we welcome, I love to obviously do these kinds of things and network with other professionals in our field too to build kind of this new culture of mental health going forward.
Great. Do you have any social media platforms?
We do, yeah. Our one that I would encourage people to follow is our Instagram page, which is Blue Skies Brain Health. Um, we post lots of mental health tips on there and even some healthy confrontation. Some of the posts we make are looking to confront people and challenge people a little bit with their own
Hmm.
mental health because I think that's such an important piece,
Hmm.
a little bit of a challenge involved in it.
Okay, great. All right. Well, again, thank you for being here. And everyone that's watching or listening, thank you for coming and checking us out today. If you liked our show, please feel free to go down and subscribe to my channel. And have a great day.
Thanks so much, Monica.